When Donna Freeman, a compassionate black nurse, was assigned to care for John Rutherford, a paralyzed white millionaire who greeted her with racial slurs and contempt, she had no idea she was about to embark on the most dangerous love story of her life. One that would transform a broken, bitter man into someone capable of profound love, only to have his own son orchestrate a devastating conspiracy to destroy them both, using the very medical system that brought them together as a weapon to tear them apart, forcing them to risk everything they've built to prove that some bonds are stronger than money, prejudice, and betrayal, and that sometimes the most unlikely people can save each other in ways that change not just their own lives, but the lives of everyone around them forever. My beautiful family and friends, welcome back. If you're ready to settle in for another unforgettable story, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Hearing from you, no matter where you are in the world, always makes me happy. And hey, if you enjoy this one, stay tuned, because there are always more powerful stories on the way, and you definitely don't want to miss them. Before we begin, do me a favor, like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone you love. You never know whose heart this story might touch. Now, let me take a moment to speak into your life. I pray that whatever burden you're carrying, you find peace that passes all understanding. I pray that in the quiet moments when no one sees your tears, God sees you and comforts you. I pray for healing over every broken piece of your heart, and strength to rise again no matter how many times life has knocked you down. May joy find its way back to you, even if you've forgotten what it feels like. May your faith be reignited, your spirit lifted, and may love, real, deep, unconditional love, surround you wherever you are right now. You're not forgotten. You're not invisible. And you're not alone. This community is your safe space, and this story, like all the others, is here to remind you just how powerful your journey truly is. Now, take a deep breath. Get comfortable, and let's dive into today's story. The antiseptic smell of Pine Valley Medical Center's private wing couldn't mask the bitterness that hung in the air like morning fog. Donna Freeman adjusted her navy scrubs for the third time in 10 minutes, her dark fingers trembling slightly as she clutched the patient chart that would change everything. Room 312. John Rutherford. Spinal injury, complete paralysis from the waist down, prognosis uncertain. She'd heard the whispers in the break room, how the other nurses had requested transfers, how even Dr. Martinez had grimaced when discussing the case. He's difficult, was all anyone would say, their eyes avoiding hers with the practiced dance of people who knew more than they were willing to share. Donna paused outside the mahogany door, her reflection caught in its polished surface. At 28, she carried herself with the quiet dignity her grandmother had instilled in her, but today something felt different. The morning sun streaming through the hallway windows seemed dimmer, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Through the crack beneath the door, she could hear the low murmur of expensive voices, lawyers probably, or business associates. The kind of people who wore their wealth like armor and treated hospitals like inconvenient pit stops in their important lives. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, the same words she'd spoken before every difficult case in her 5-year career. But as her hand touched the cold metal handle, a chill ran down her spine that had nothing to do with the hospital's aggressive air conditioning. The voices inside grew louder, more agitated. Someone was arguing about stock options and board meetings, as if the man lying paralyzed in that bed was nothing more than a disruption to their quarterly projections. Donna had seen it before, how money could insulate people from their own humanity, how privilege could become a prison more confining than any physical limitation. She knocked twice, soft but firm, and waited for the gruff come in that would seal her fate. What she couldn't know, as she turned that handle and stepped into John Rutherford's world, was that she was about to embark on a journey that would test every belief she held about forgiveness, redemption, and the true meaning of healing. She couldn't know that the man who would soon look at her with such contempt would also become the catalyst for the most profound transformation of her life. And she certainly couldn't know that in exactly 18 months, she would be standing in this same hallway, her heart shattered into pieces, wondering how someone she had poured her soul into saving could throw her away like yesterday's newspaper. The door swung open, revealing a room that looked more like a luxury hotel suite than a medical facility. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, while original artwork adorned walls painted in soothing earth tones. In the center of it all, propped up in a state-of-the-art hospital bed, lay John Rutherford. Even paralyzed, he commanded the room with a presence that seemed to bend gravity itself. His silver hair was perfectly styled despite his condition, and his steel-gray eyes held the kind of cold intelligence that had built empires and crushed competitors. Those eyes found Donna immediately, scanning her from head to toe with the calculating gaze of a man accustomed to cataloging people's worth in seconds. "So," he said, his voice carrying the crisp authority of someone who had never been told no, "they've sent me the help. What do you think Donna should do in this moment? Respond with professionalism, confront his obvious prejudice, or find another way to handle this loaded first encounter? Share your thoughts below." The silence stretched between them like a taut wire, charged with the electricity of unspoken truths. Donna felt the familiar weight settle in her chest, the same heaviness she'd carried since childhood, when classmates would whisper behind her back about her thrift store clothes and her grandmother's broken English. But she'd learned long ago that dignity wasn't something anyone could take from you. It was something you either chose to carry or chose to abandon. "My name is Donna Freeman," she said, her voice steady as she approached his bedside. "I'll be your primary nurse during the day shift." John's laugh was sharp, brittle. "Freeman. How deliciously ironic." His eyes glittered with cruel amusement. "Tell me, Donna Freeman, what makes you think you're qualified to care for someone like me?" The three men in expensive suits shifted uncomfortably near the windows, their conversation dying as they witnessed their colleagues' naked hostility. Donna recognized the type, enablers who had grown rich by never challenging the hand that fed them, even when that hand struck others. "I've been working in spinal rehabilitation for 5 years, Donna replied, checking his chart with practiced efficiency. "I have my RN from State University, and I specialize in cases involving complete thoracic injuries." She looked up, meeting his gaze without flinching. "But more importantly, Mr. Rutherford, I believe every person deserves to heal." Something flickered across John's face, surprise perhaps, at her refusal to be cowed. In his world, people either cowered or fought back with equal venom. This quiet strength was unfamiliar territory. "How touchingly naive," he said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. "Tell me, do you have a family, Donna Freeman?" The question caught her off guard. Yes, sir. My grandmother raised me." "And where is she now?" Donna's throat tightened. "She passed last year. Cancer." The words still felt foreign in her mouth, still carried the weight of that final hospital room, that final breath. "I'm sorry for your loss," John said, and for a moment, his voice carried genuine sympathy. Then, as if catching himself in an act of weakness, his expression hardened again. "I suppose that explains your savior complex." One of the suits, a thin man with nervous energy, cleared his throat. "John, perhaps we should let you rest. The nurse has work to do." "The nurse," John emphasized, "can wait. We have important matters to discuss." But Donna was already moving, checking his 4 lines, adjusting his position with a gentle efficiency that had earned her recognition throughout the hospital. Her hands were sure, professional, kind, and John found himself studying them despite his best efforts. They were small hands, calloused from hard work, with short, practical nails. Healing hands. "Your blood pressure is elevated," she observed, noting the readings on his monitor. "The stress of your meetings might be counterproductive to your recovery." "Are you telling me how to run my business?" His tone was dangerous. "I'm telling you how to recover from a traumatic spinal injury," Donna replied calmly. "The choice of which advice to follow is entirely yours." Outside the room, Dr. Elena Rodriguez paused in the hallway, watching through the partially open door. At 45, Elena had seen every kind of doctor-patient dynamic imaginable, but something about this pairing made her stomach clench with worry. She'd specifically requested Donna for this case precisely because of her almost supernatural ability to connect with difficult patients, But John Rutherford wasn't just difficult. He was potentially destructive. Elena thought about Donna's file, locked away in her office drawer. The commendations, the patient testimonials, the quiet acts of heroism that never made it into official reports. Like the time Donna had spent her own money to buy Christmas presents for the children in the pediatric ward, or how she'd sat with elderly patients during their final hours when no family came to visit. But Elena also remembered the conversation in her office 2 months ago, when Donna had broken down and confessed her deepest fear, that she would never be enough, that no matter how hard she worked or how much love she poured into her patients, she would always be seen as less than by people who mattered. "I keep thinking about my grandmother," Donna had whispered that day, tears streaming down her face. She cleaned houses for 60 years, and they still called her girl when she was 70. What if I'm just fooling myself? What if I can never really make a difference? Elena had assured her that she was making a difference, that her patients loved her, that her colleagues respected her. But privately, Elena worried about Donna's tendency to give too much of herself, to absorb others' pain as if it were her own. Now, watching Donna navigate John Rutherford's minefield of prejudice with such grace, Elena felt a protective instinct surge through her chest. She'd seen too many good nurses broken by patients who used their vulnerability as a weapon. Back in the room, Donna was explaining John's medication schedule, her voice patient and professional despite his continued attempts to rattle her. "The muscle relaxants will help with spasms," she said, "but they may make you drowsy. The anti-inflammatories. Do you really think I care about your little pills?" John interrupted. "Do you understand who I am? I own 17 companies. I employ over 10,000 people. I have senators on speed dial. And right now," Donna said quietly, "you can't feel your legs." The room fell silent. The suits exchanged glances, uncertain whether to intervene or flee. John's face went through a series of expressions: rage, disbelief, and finally, something that looked almost like respect. "Get out," he said to the men near the windows. "All of you. Now." They left quickly, murmuring apologies and promises to call later. The door closed with a soft click, leaving Donna alone with the most dangerous patient of her career. John studied her for a long moment, this small woman who had just done what none of his business associates, lawyers, or board members had dared to do: tell him an uncomfortable truth. "Why are you here, Donna Freeman?" he asked, his voice quieter now, almost curious. "Why do you do this work?" Donna considered the question, remembering her grandmother's words from so many years ago: "Baby girl, there's hurting people everywhere, and somebody got to be willing to love them back to whole." "Because," she said simply, "everyone deserves a chance to heal. Even you, Mr. Rutherford." For the first time since his accident, John Rutherford had nothing to say. 3 days later, Donna found John Rutherford crying. She had entered his room at 2:17 a.m. during her double shift, expecting to find him asleep. Instead, she discovered him staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city lights below, tears streaming down his face in the darkness. The proud, imperious man who had spent the past 72 hours hurling insults and racial slurs at her was completely broken. He didn't notice her at first, lost in whatever private hell consumed him in the small hours of the night. Donna stood frozen in the doorway, witnessing something she was never meant to see: the complete dissolution of John Rutherford's carefully constructed fortress. "Please," he whispered to the empty room, his voice raw with anguish. "Please, I can't. I can't live like this." The words hit Donna like a physical blow. She had seen despair before, had held dying patients' hands and comforted grieving families, but there was something uniquely devastating about watching someone so powerful discover their own powerlessness. She could have backed away, could have returned in an hour when he'd composed himself. Any other nurse probably would have. But something in his broken voice called to the deepest part of her, the part that had never been able to walk away from pain, no matter how much it cost her. "Mr. Rutherford," she said softly. He spun toward her with startling speed, his tear-streaked face cycling through shame, rage, and something that looked almost like relief at being found. "Get out," he snarled, but there was no venom left in it. Just get out. Instead, Donna stepped further into the room, closing the door behind her. I brought your night medication. I don't want your goddamn pills. His voice cracked on the last word. I know. She moved to his bedside, setting the medication cup on his nightstand. But your body needs them whether you want them or not. John laughed bitterly. My body. What's left of it? He gestured helplessly at his legs. Do you know what it's like? To wake up every morning and remember all over again that half of you is dead. Donna sat down in the chair beside his bed, something she'd never done during the day's shifts, when his cruelty kept her standing at attention. No, she said honestly. I don't. Then you can't possibly understand. You're right, she agreed. But I understand something else. What? The question came out as barely a whisper. I understand what it feels like to have people look at you and see only what's wrong with you. To have them decide your worth based on something you can't change. John's eyes snapped to hers, searching her face in the dim light. For a moment, the racial barrier between them seemed to dissolve, replaced by something more fundamental, two human beings recognizing pain in each other. It's not the same thing, he said, but without his usual conviction. Isn't it? Donna leaned forward slightly. You think because I'm black, I don't know what it feels like to be powerless? To have people dismiss me before I even speak? You think I haven't spent my whole life proving I'm worth something? That's different. You chose this. I never chose. Neither did I. Her voice was steady but fierce. I didn't choose the color of my skin any more than you chose to have that car accident. The mention of his accident sent a visible shockwave through John's body. His hands gripped the bed rails, knuckles white with strain. How do you know about the car? He asked suspiciously. It's in your medical file. Single car accident on Highway 12, 3 weeks ago. You were alone. What the file didn't say, what no one knew except John himself, was that he hadn't been trying to get anywhere that night. He'd been driving to clear his head after the board meeting from hell, the one where his own son had challenged his leadership, had suggested it was time for new blood to take over the company John had built from nothing. He'd been so lost in rage and betrayal that he hadn't seen the curve until it was too late. The car had wrapped around an oak tree that was probably older than his entire fortune, and in that split second of twisted metal and shattered glass, everything he'd thought mattered had been revealed as meaningless. They think I'm going to die, he said suddenly, the words tumbling out like a confession. The doctors won't say it directly, but I can see it in their faces. Even if I survive, what kind of life is this? I can't walk. I can't. He couldn't finish the sentence. You can't what you used to, Donna said carefully. That doesn't mean you can't do anything. Easy for you to say. No, she said, surprising him with her intensity. It's not easy for me to say anything to you. Do you know how many times in the past 3 days I've wanted to walk out of this room and never come back? John looked genuinely startled. Then why haven't you? It was the question Donna had been asking herself since she'd first walked through his door. Why did she keep coming back to face his cruelty? Why did she absorb his insults and respond with kindness? Why was she here now, in the middle of the night, when she should be completing her rounds? Because, she said, the words coming from a place deeper than thought, I think you're worth saving. The silence that followed was profound, loaded with the weight of possibility. John stared at her as if she'd spoken in a foreign language, as if the concept of his own worth being recognized by someone he tried so hard to diminish was incomprehensible. You don't know me, he said finally. If you knew the things I've done, the people I've hurt to build my empire. I know you're in pain, Donna replied. And I know you're scared. That's enough for me to start with. Something shifted in John's face then, some invisible wall beginning to crack. For the first time since his accident, he felt seen, not as the powerful CEO or the broken patient, but as a human being carrying wounds that went far deeper than his paralyzed legs. "I don't understand you," he whispered. "That's okay," Donna said, standing to leave. "You don't have to understand me. You just have to let me help you." As she reached the door, his voice stopped her. "Donna." It was the first time he'd said her name without malice. "Why are you really doing this?" She turned back to him, this broken, dangerous man who had spent 3 days trying to destroy her spirit, and felt something shift in her chest, a recognition, a calling, a terrible and wonderful certainty that this was where she was meant to be. "Because someone has to believe you can be better than your worst moments," she said. "And I've decided that someone is going to be me." The choice Donna just made will change both of their lives forever. But do you think she's being naive about John's capacity for change, or do you see something in him worth saving? What would you do in her position? Walk away or dig deeper? Let me know your thoughts. 2 weeks into their unlikely partnership, Donna arrived at the hospital to find Dr. Patricia Whitmore waiting by her locker, arms crossed and lips pressed into a thin line. Dr. Whitmore was the head of the rehabilitation department, a woman whose surgical precision extended to every aspect of her personality, including her disapproval. "Ms. Freeman, we need to talk." Donna's stomach dropped. She'd been expecting this conversation ever since John's miraculous progress had become the talk of Pine Valley Medical Center. In just 14 days, he had gone from complete despair to participating in physical therapy, from hurling racial slurs to asking about her grandmother's recipes. The transformation was so dramatic that other staff members had begun to whisper, "Of course, Dr. Whitmore. Is there a problem?" Several problems, actually. Dr. Whitmore pulled out a tablet, swiping through what appeared to be incident reports. "You've been working unauthorized double shifts in Mr. Rutherford's wing. You've been observed entering his room during off hours. And yesterday, maintenance reported finding personal items in his room: books, homemade food, a small radio." Donna's cheeks burned with embarrassment and defiance. "Mr. Rutherford has been making exceptional progress. I thought." "You thought wrong." Dr. Whitmore's voice cut through the air like a scalpel. "This hospital has protocols for a reason, Ms. Freeman. Professional boundaries exist to protect both patients and staff." "I understand, but—" "Do you?" Dr. Whitmore stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Because from where I stand, it looks like you're developing an inappropriate attachment to a patient. A very wealthy, very powerful patient who could destroy your career with a single phone call." The accusation hit Donna like a slap. "Dr. Whitmore, I would never compromise my professional ethics. Mr. Rutherford is making progress because someone finally treated him like a human being instead of a diagnosis. And what happens when he recovers and returns to his real life?" Dr. Whitmore's eyes were sharp, calculating. "What happens when he remembers that you're just the nurse who wiped his forehead? Do you really think people like John Rutherford maintain friendships with people like you?" The words "people like you" hung in the air, loaded with implications that neither woman wanted to address directly. Donna felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the same feeling she'd carried since childhood when teachers assumed she couldn't keep up, when store clerks followed her through aisles, when colleagues praised her work with barely concealed surprise. "I'm doing my job," Donna said quietly. "Are you?" "Because your job is to provide medical care, not to become emotionally involved with patients." Dr. Whitmore softened slightly, perhaps recognizing she had pushed too hard. "Look, Donna, you're a good nurse. One of our best. But this situation with Rutherford, it's dangerous territory. For your sake and his." Meanwhile, 3 floors up in the executive boardroom of Rutherford Industries, a different kind of tension was brewing. James Rutherford, John's eldest son and heir apparent, sat across from the company's board of directors, his hands folded calmly on the polished mahogany table. "Gentlemen, ladies," James began, his voice carrying the same authoritative timbre as his father's, "we need to discuss the elephant in the room. My father's condition has created a power vacuum that our competitors are already moving to exploit." Margaret Chun, the CFO, shuffled through her papers nervously. "James, with respect, your father's recovery has been remarkable. Perhaps we should wait." "Wait for what?" James's composure cracked slightly. "Wait for him to miraculously walk again? Face reality, Margaret. Even if he recovers physically, the damage to the company's image has been severe. We need stable leadership." Thomas Bradley, a longtime family friend and board member, frowned. "Your father built this company from nothing, James. He deserves our loyalty." "He has my loyalty," James replied smoothly, "which is why I'm trying to save what he built. But sentiment doesn't pay shareholders dividends." He pulled out a folder thick with documents. "I've been in contact with several potential buyers for the smaller subsidiaries. If we act quickly, we can restructure before the next quarterly report." What James didn't mention, what none of them knew, was that he'd been planning this takeover long before his father's accident. John Rutherford had always been a force of nature, impossible to compete with, impossible to surpass. But a paralyzed man in a hospital bed? That was a problem James could finally solve. Back at Pine Valley, Donna found John in the rehabilitation gym, sweat beading on his forehead as he struggled through his physical therapy routine. His progress had been extraordinary. The doctors were cautiously optimistic that he might regain some feeling and movement in his legs, though full recovery remained uncertain. "You're late," he said without looking up from the parallel bars where he was attempting to support his weight with his arms. His tone was teasing rather than accusatory, a development that still surprised both of them. "Dr. Whitmore wanted to chat," Donna replied, trying to keep her voice light. John's hands stilled on the bars. In the past 2 weeks, he had become surprisingly attuned to her moods, able to read the subtle shifts in her voice that others missed. "What about?" "Professional boundaries. Hospital protocols." Donna moved to spot him during his exercises, a routine they developed that felt as natural as breathing. "The usual administrative concerns. She thinks you're getting too close to a patient." "It wasn't a question." "Something like that." John was quiet for a long moment, focusing on his exercises but clearly processing this information. The past 2 weeks had been the strangest of his life, not just because of his injury, but because of the woman who had somehow become essential to his daily existence. Donna had brought more than just medical care into his sterile hospital room. She had brought stories about her grandmother's garden, discussions about books she thought he might enjoy, homemade soup when the hospital food proved inedible. She had listened to his fears about the company, his complicated relationship with his children, his growing awareness of how hollow his previous life had been. More disturbing still, he had found himself looking forward to her arrival each morning, had begun measuring his days by the rhythm of her voice, the gentle efficiency of her hands, the way she never let him wallow in self-pity but also never dismissed his very real struggles. "She's not wrong," he said finally. Donna's hands faltered in their support, and for a moment, John's weight shifted dangerously. She steadied him quickly, professionally, but the moment of vulnerability had passed between them like an electric current. "What do you mean?" John met her eyes in the mirror across from the parallel bars. "This isn't normal, is it? The way I depend on you. The way I look for you when I wake up, count the minutes until your shift starts." The admission hung between them, dangerous and honest. Donna felt her heart hammering against her ribs, felt the careful professional distance she had maintained beginning to crumble. "Mr. Rutherford." "John," he corrected quietly. "When it's just us, call me John." "John." His name felt strange on her lips, too intimate, too real. "You're recovering from a traumatic injury. It's natural to form attachments to your care team." "Is that what this is? A trauma response?" Donna helped him back into his wheelchair, the familiar routine giving her hands something to do while her mind raced. "I don't know what this is," she admitted. The honesty in her voice made John's chest tighten with an emotion he couldn't name. When was the last time someone had been genuinely uncertain about him, had been affected by his presence in a way that couldn't be reduced to fear, greed, or calculation. "Dr. Whitmore is probably right," Donna continued, stepping back to a more professional distance. "Maybe I have gotten too involved." "And if you have?" John asked. "What happens then?" Before Donna could answer, the rehabilitation room door burst open, and James Rutherford strode in with the confident stride of a man accustomed to owning every room he entered. He was 42, impeccably dressed despite the hospital setting, and carried himself with a casual arrogance that came from a lifetime of privilege. "Dad." James's greeting was warm but calculated, the smile never quite reaching his eyes. "You're looking stronger." "James." John's voice cooled noticeably. "I wasn't expecting you. I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd check on your progress." James's gaze swept the room, taking in the rehabilitation equipment, the sweat on his father's brow, and finally settling on Donna with a kind of dismissive assessment she recognized all too well. "And this must be your nurse." "Donna Freeman," she introduced herself, extending her hand with professional courtesy. James shook it briefly, his grip firm but impersonal. "Ms. Freeman. I hope my father hasn't been too difficult. He can be challenging when he doesn't get his way." "Your father has been an exemplary patient," Donna replied evenly, but John caught the slight edge in her voice. "Has he?" James's smile sharpened. "How refreshing. Dad's never been known for his patience with the help." The word help landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples of tension through the room. John's hands gripped his wheelchair arms, his jaw tightening with barely controlled anger. "James," he warned. "What?" "I'm just saying it's nice that you found someone who can tolerate your particular management style." James turned back to Donna with false warmth. "I'm sure it's been quite an education, working with someone of my father's stature." Donna felt the familiar burn of coded condescension, the carefully crafted insults designed to remind her of her place without crossing into obvious racism. She had dealt with men like James her entire career, smooth, educated, progressive in their language but poisonous in their assumptions. "Your father has taught me a great deal," she said carefully. "About resilience, mostly. And the capacity for growth." John felt something shift in his chest as he watched Donna navigate his son's subtle cruelty with grace and dignity. This was what she dealt with every day, he realized. People who looked at her and saw only limitations, who questioned her competence based on her skin color, who treated her kindness as servitude. For the first time in his life, John Rutherford felt ashamed of being rich and white. "Well," James continued, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling around him, "I'm sure Dad appreciates your dedication. Though I hope you understand that his recovery is just the first step. Once he's back on his feet, he'll be returning to a very demanding lifestyle." The implication was clear. Whatever relationship had formed between John and his nurse was temporary, a hospital fantasy that would evaporate the moment real life resumed. "Of course," Donna said quietly. "I understand completely." But as she turned to check John's foreline, he caught her wrist gently, his fingers warm against her pulse point. "Do you?" he asked, his voice low enough that James couldn't hear. "Because I'm not sure I do anymore." James has just drawn a line in the sand, making it clear that Donna's place in John's life is temporary. But John seems to be pushing back against those expectations. "Do you think John is strong enough to stand up to his son's manipulation, or will family pressure and social expectations win out? And what about Donna? Should she protect her heart or fight for this connection? Share your thoughts below." John's hands shook as he held the legal documents that would redefine the rest of his life. It was 11:47 p.m., and Pine Valley Medical Center had settled into its nighttime rhythm of hushed conversations and distant alarms. But in room 312, the world had just tilted off its axis. The papers had arrived by courier an hour ago, delivered with the clinical efficiency that characterized all of James's business dealings. A competency hearing, medical power of attorney, corporate restructuring documents, all bearing tomorrow's date, all requiring John's signature, or proceeding without it if he was deemed mentally unfit to make informed decisions. "This can't be legal," John whispered to the empty room, but even as he said it, he recognized his son's handiwork. James had always been thorough, had always planned 3 moves ahead. The only thing John couldn't figure out was the timing. Why now, when his recovery was progressing so well? The answer came with a soft knock on his door. John quickly shoved the documents under his blanket, expecting the night nurse. Instead, Donna slipped into the room, her face etched with exhaustion and something that looked like defeat. "You shouldn't be here," John said automatically, but his heart lifted despite everything. "Dr. Whitmore will." "Dr. Whitmore suspended me pending an internal investigation," Donna said quietly, settling into the chair beside his bed. "Effective tomorrow morning." The words hit John like a physical blow. What? On what grounds? Unprofessional conduct. Boundary violations. Suspected emotional manipulation of a vulnerable patient. Donna's voice was steady, but John could see the hurt burning in her eyes. "Apparently, someone filed a formal complaint suggesting I was taking advantage of your diminished capacity." John's blood ran cold. The timing was too perfect, too calculated. "Who filed the complaint?" "They won't tell me." "Anonymous whistleblower," they said. "Someone concerned about your welfare." Donna looked down at her hands. "I've been reassigned to pediatrics while they conduct their investigation." "This is James," John said with certainty. "This is my son's doing." "John, you can't know that." "Can't I?" He pulled the legal documents from beneath his blanket, spreading them across his bed table. "Look at this. Look at what arrived tonight." Donna's eyes widened as she scanned the papers. "A competency hearing? John, what is this?" "It's a corporate coup disguised as family concern," John said bitterly. "James wants me declared mentally incompetent so he can take control of the company. And apparently, he's decided that my relationship with you is evidence of my diminished mental state." The full picture began to crystallize with horrible clarity. Dr. Whitmore's sudden concerns about professional boundaries. The timing of the anonymous complaint. The legal documents demanding immediate action. James had orchestrated all of it, using Donna as both weapon and shield, her closeness to John as evidence of his impaired judgment, her suspension as proof of the hospital's concerns about his mental state. "He's using me," Donna whispered. "He's using what we have against you." "No." John's voice was fierce, certain. "He's using what we have to try to destroy us both." But he made one critical mistake. "What's that?" John met her eyes with an intensity that took her breath away. "He assumes I'm still the same man who cared more about my empire than about people. He assumes I'll choose power over." He paused, the weight of his own feelings catching him off guard. "Over what?" Donna asked softly. "Over you." The words hung between them like a bridge neither had expected to cross. For weeks, they had danced around the growing connection between them, calling it professional, calling it therapeutic, calling it anything but what it actually was. But in this moment, with betrayal and conspiracy swirling around them, pretense felt like a luxury they could no longer afford. "John," Donna said carefully, "you don't know what you're saying. The medications, the stress of your recovery." "Stop." He reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. "Don't do that. Don't minimize what's happening between us just because it scares you. It should scare me. It should scare us both." Donna's voice was barely above a whisper. "You're a billionaire. I'm a nurse from the wrong side of town. When you recover fully, when you go back to your real life." "What if this is my real life now?" John interrupted. "What if everything I thought mattered before was just elaborate self-deception?" Donna studied his face in the dim light, searching for signs of the cruel man who had called her the help just 3 weeks ago. But that man seemed to have vanished, replaced by someone she barely recognized, vulnerable, honest, and looking at her as if she were the most important person in the world. "Your son will destroy you," she said. "If you fight this competency hearing, if you choose to defend what's between us, he'll take everything you've built. Then let him take it." The words shocked them both. John Rutherford, the man who had clawed his way from poverty to build a business empire, who had sacrificed relationships and principles on the altar of success, was choosing love over power. "You don't mean that," Donna said, but her heart was hammering with hope and terror. "Don't I?" John pulled himself higher in the bed, wincing at the effort. "Donna, before my accident, I was dying. Not physically, but spiritually. I had everything money could buy and nothing that actually mattered. I was cruel to people who didn't deserve it, indifferent to suffering I could have prevented, arrogant about blessings I'd never earned." "John, let me finish." His grip on her hand tightened. "You saved my life. Not just medically, though God knows you did that too. You saved my soul. You looked at me at my absolute worst and decided I was worth redemption. You taught me what it means to be human again." Tears were streaming down Donna's face now, years of carefully constructed walls crumbling in the face of his raw honesty. "So if James wants to play hardball," John continued, "if he wants to use our connection as evidence against me, then let's give him something real to worry about. Let's fight this together." Together. Donna's voice cracked. "I'm going to contest the competency hearing. I'm going to fight for my right to make my own decisions about my life and my company. And I'm going to make it very clear that my relationship with you isn't evidence of impaired judgment. It's evidence of the best decision I've made in 20 years. The magnitude of what he was proposing hit Donna like a tidal wave. He was willing to risk everything, his fortune, his family relationships, his business empire, to defend their connection. No one had ever fought for her like that, had ever seen her as worth such a monumental sacrifice. But the cost would be enormous, for both of them. James would use every resource at his disposal to paint John as a mentally unstable man manipulated by a scheming nurse. The media would have a field day with the story. Donna's career would be scrutinized, her motives questioned, her personal life dissected in public forums. "The investigation will destroy my career," she said quietly. "Not if we win." "And if we lose?" John was quiet for a long moment, considering the full implications of failure. "If we lose, I'll be declared incompetent. James will control everything I built, and you'll be branded as someone who took advantage of a vulnerable patient. We'll both lose everything. Then why risk it?" John lifted their joined hands to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles, a gesture so tender it made her heart ache. "Because some things are worth losing everything for," he said simply. "And you, Donna Freeman, are one of them." As if summoned by their conversation, Donna's phone buzzed with a text message. Her face went pale as she read it. "What is it?" John asked. "It's from Dr. Rodriguez. She wants to see me in her office first thing in the morning. She says there have been additional allegations." John's jaw clenched. "What kind of allegations?" "Financial impropriety. Someone claims I've been accepting gifts from you, that I've been trying to manipulate you into changing your will." Donna's voice was hollow with disbelief. "John, I've never taken anything from you except that book you insisted I keep, and I tried to give that back." "I know." John's voice was deadly quiet. "This is James ensuring that even if I'm declared competent, you'll be too damaged professionally to remain in my life." The full scope of the conspiracy was breathtaking in its ruthlessness. James hadn't just planned a corporate takeover. He had orchestrated the systematic destruction of everything that might anchor his father to a different way of living. "He thought of everything," Donna whispered. "Not everything," John replied, his voice carrying a new edge of determination. "He didn't count on me being willing to burn it all down to protect you." Outside the room, Dr. Elena Rodriguez paused in the hallway, having overheard more of the conversation than she intended. In her 20 years at Pine Valley, She had never seen a case quite like this. A patient transformation so profound it had triggered what appeared to be a calculated campaign of destruction. Elena believed in Donna's integrity absolutely. She had watched the young nurse pour her heart into patient care with no thought of personal gain, had seen her refuse tips and gifts from grateful families, had witnessed her moral courage in difficult situations. But she also knew that institutional medicine was a game of politics and perception, where appearance often mattered more than truth. If James Rutherford was truly behind these allegations, he had the resources and connections to make them stick regardless of their validity. As she walked away from John's room, Elena made a decision that would change everything. She pulled out her phone and began composing an email to someone she hadn't spoken to in years, an investigative journalist who specialized in corporate malfeasance and had a reputation for taking on powerful families. If James Rutherford wanted to play dirty, Elena would make sure he didn't get to do it in the shadows. Back in room 312, John and Donna sat in the darkness, their hands still intertwined, both understanding that they had just crossed a point of no return. "Are you sure about this?" Donna asked one final time. "Are you sure I'm worth losing everything?" John brought her hand to rest against his chest, over his heart that had been dead to real feeling for so many years. "Donna," he said quietly, "you didn't just help me recover from paralysis. You taught me how to feel again. You showed me that love isn't weakness, it's the only strength that actually matters." He paused, gathering courage for words he'd never spoken to anyone. "I love you," he said simply. "I love your kindness, your strength, your refusal to let me give up on myself. I love the way you see potential in broken things. I love that you made me want to be worthy of your faith in me." Donna's breath caught. "John. And if loving you costs me everything else, then everything else wasn't worth having in the first place." John just declared war on his own son and put everything on the line for love. But do you think he's strong enough to follow through when the real battle begins? And is Donna ready to fight alongside him, or will the pressure tear them apart? What would you do if someone you loved asked you to risk everything for a chance at happiness? Let me know what you think will happen next. The competency hearing took place on a gray Thursday morning in the sterile conference room of Pine Valley's administrative wing. John sat in his wheelchair at one end of the polished table, flanked by his hastily assembled legal team, while James occupied the opposite end with an army of corporate attorneys and medical experts. Donna wasn't allowed in the room. She paced the hallway outside, her hands trembling as she clutched the termination letter that had arrived that morning. The hospital's investigation had concluded with brutal efficiency, gross violation of professional boundaries, financial impropriety, and exploitation of a vulnerable patient. Her nursing license was under review. Her career was over. Through the thick glass doors, she could see John fighting for his life. Not the physical life she had helped him reclaim, but the life he wanted to build with her. His voice carried through the walls in fragments of sound mind. "My own decisions. Not manipulation but love." But she could also see the expressions on the faces of the medical panel, the barely concealed skepticism of the hospital administrators, the satisfied smirks of James's legal team. They had painted a picture of a mentally compromised man, isolated and vulnerable, taken advantage of by a calculating nurse who had seen an opportunity for personal gain. The evidence they presented was damning in its carefully constructed narrative. Security footage of Donna entering John's room during off hours. Testimony from staff members about her unusual emotional investment in his case. Financial records showing the expensive gifts John had attempted to give her, gifts she had refused, but the refusal itself was twisted into evidence of her sophisticated manipulation. She knew how to play the long game, James's lead attorney argued. She understood that obvious gold-digging would be detected, so she created an elaborate fiction of self-sacrifice and genuine care. The fact that she refused initial gifts only made her more appealing to a lonely, injured man desperate for authentic connection. Inside the hearing room, John felt his world collapsing with each calculated lie. His own son, the child he had raised, had groomed to take over the empire, was systematically destroying the only real happiness John had ever known. "Your Honor," John said, his voice cracking with emotion, "I understand why this situation appears concerning from the outside. I understand that my feelings for Ms. Freeman may seem sudden or inexplicable. But I'm asking you to consider the possibility that trauma doesn't just reveal our weaknesses, sometimes it reveals our truths." Dr. Patricia Whitmore, called as a witness for the hospital, testified with clinical precision about the dangers of patients forming attachments to their caregivers during vulnerable periods. Her words were professional, accurate, and devastating. "Emotional transference is common in these situations," she explained to the panel. "Patients often mistake gratitude for love, dependence for genuine connection. Mr. Rutherford's attachment to Ms. Freeman fits a classic pattern of psychological vulnerability being exploited, however unconsciously." But it was Dr. Samuel Hayes, the court-appointed psychiatrist, who delivered the killing blow. After a 45-minute evaluation, he pronounced John Rutherford to be suffering from acute stress response with features of delusional thinking regarding interpersonal relationships. The patient demonstrates impaired judgment specifically related to his emotional attachments, Dr. Hayes testified. His insistence on the authenticity and appropriateness of his relationship with Ms. Freeman, despite clear evidence of professional boundary violations, suggests a significant disconnect from reality. John watched his life being dissected by strangers who had never seen Donna hold his hand during panic attacks, had never witnessed her gentle encouragement during his darkest moments, had never felt the healing power of her presence. They reduced their love to clinical terminology: transference, manipulation, delusional thinking. Outside in the hallway, Donna's phone buzzed with notifications. The story had broken in the morning news: Billionaire's nurse romance, love or con game? Her photo, a professional headshot from the hospital directory, appeared alongside headlines that made her stomach turn. Social media exploded with commentary, most of it viciously racist and misogynistic. Complete strangers dissected her appearance, her background, her motives with the casual cruelty of people who had never been vulnerable to anything. Elena Rodriguez found Donna slumped against the hallway wall, tears streaming down her face as she read the endless stream of hateful comments. "Don't look at that," Elena said gently, taking the phone from Donna's hands. "None of those people know you. None of them understand what really happened." "It doesn't matter," Donna whispered. "The truth doesn't matter anymore. They've made me into a villain, and John into a victim, and there's no way back from that. Donna. He's going to lose everything because of me." Donna's voice broke completely. His company, his family relationships, his dignity, all because he thought I was worth fighting for. But I'm not. I'm just a nurse who forgot her place in the world. Elena knelt beside her, recognizing the devastating self-doubt that had been weaponized against this remarkable young woman. "You saved that man's life in every way that matters." "Did I? Or did I just destroy it more slowly than the accident did?" Through the conference room doors, they could hear James delivering his closing argument with the polished rhetoric of a man who had never doubted his own righteousness. "My father built an empire through decades of careful decision-making and strategic thinking," James said, his voice carrying the weight of filial concern. "The man in that wheelchair, the man who wants to throw away everything he worked for over a misguided infatuation with his nurse, that's not my father. That's a broken man who needs our protection, not our enablement." The hearing concluded at 4:17 p.m. with a decision that would reverberate through both their lives. The panel ruled that John Rutherford, while not completely incompetent, was experiencing significantly impaired judgment related to his medical trauma and required a conservatorship to protect his interests. James was appointed as his guardian, with full control over medical decisions and business operations until John could demonstrate sustained mental stability for a period of no less than 6 months. Additionally, the panel issued a restraining order prohibiting any contact between John and Donna Freeman, citing the toxic dynamic that had developed between patient and caregiver. John sat in stunned silence as the decision was read, understanding that he had just lost everything that mattered. Not the money. He had lost money before and made it back. Not the company. It was just a collection of assets and contracts. But Donna. His chance at real love, real connection, real redemption. He was led from the conference room in his wheelchair, flanked by security guards who would ensure he had no opportunity to contact the woman who had saved his soul. As he passed Donna in the hallway, their eyes met for what both believed would be the last time. In that moment, everything they had never said passed between them. Apologies and promises, gratitude and regret, love and loss, all compressed into a single look that lasted perhaps 3 seconds, but would haunt them both forever. "I'm sorry," John mouthed silently, tears streaming down his face. "I love you," Donna replied, not caring who heard or saw or judged. Then he was gone, wheeled away by strangers toward a life that would be carefully managed to exclude her entirely. Donna stood alone in the empty hallway, her career destroyed, her heart shattered, her faith in love's power to overcome obstacles lying in pieces around her feet. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting their harsh glow on the wreckage of the most beautiful thing she had ever tried to build. For the first time in her life, Donna Freeman wondered if her grandmother had been wrong. Maybe there weren't enough people willing to love the broken back to wholeness. Maybe some battles couldn't be won through grace and determination alone. Maybe some love stories were just too dangerous for the real world to allow. 6 miles away, in the penthouse suite of Rutherford Industries, James poured himself a whiskey and looked out at the city his father had helped shape through 40 years of ruthless ambition. The company was his now, the family reputation intact, the embarrassing spectacle of his father's inappropriate relationship safely contained. He had won completely and absolutely. So why did victory taste like ash in his mouth? His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Rutherford, this is Sarah Chun from the Washington Herald. I'm working on a story about institutional racism in healthcare and corporate manipulation of the legal system. I'd like to discuss your recent actions regarding your father and Donna Freeman. Call me." James deleted the message without reading it twice, but a small seed of unease began growing in his chest. He had been thorough, had covered every angle, had anticipated every possible complication. Except one, the possibility that destroying 2 good people might create consequences he hadn't foreseen. This is the moment where everything seems lost. John is under a conservatorship, Donna's career is ruined, and they're forbidden from seeing each other. But sometimes the darkest hour is when unexpected allies emerge. Do you think there's any way back from this devastating defeat, or has James's manipulation been too complete? What would it take for love to triumph over such systematic destruction? Share your thoughts. I want to know if you still believe in happy endings when everything looks hopeless. 3 weeks after the hearing, Sarah Chun sat in her Washington Herald office staring at the most devastating story of corporate corruption she had uncovered in 15 years of investigative journalism. The evidence spread across her desk told a tale of calculated destruction that made her stomach turn: forged medical opinions, bribed hospital administrators, and a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of Pine Valley's medical establishment. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been thorough in her documentation. Security footage showing James Rutherford meeting privately with Dr. Whitmore the day before Donna's suspension. Financial records revealing payments from Rutherford Industries to 3 of the medical panel members who had ruled on John's competency. Email chains discussing the problem of John's relationship and the need to neutralize it before it damaged the company's reputation. But the smoking gun was a recorded phone conversation between James and Dr. Hayes, the court-appointed psychiatrist, captured accidentally when James had pocket-dialed his assistant during their planning session. "We need him declared incompetent without making it look deliberate," James's voice was clear on the recording. "Focus on the nurse situation. Make it sound like he's been manipulated, like his judgment is compromised. Can you do that?" "For the fee we discussed," Dr. Hayes replied, "I can diagnose whatever you need me to diagnose." Sarah picked up her phone and dialed the number she had memorized 3 days ago. Donna Freeman. "Ms. Freeman, this is Sarah Chun from the Washington Herald. We spoke briefly about. I told you, I'm not interested in giving interviews." Donna's voice was hollow, exhausted. "I'm not calling for an interview. I'm calling to tell you that I have evidence, concrete, undeniable evidence, that you and Mr. Rutherford were victims of a carefully orchestrated conspiracy." The silence on the other end stretched for nearly 30 seconds. "What kind of evidence?" Donna finally whispered. "The kind that's going to put James Rutherford in prison and give you both your lives back." Meanwhile, at the Rutherford estate, John stared out his bedroom window at the gardens his late wife had designed 30 years ago. The room was luxurious, but felt like a prison cell. James had hired around-the-clock nurses to monitor his mental state, had removed his computers and phones, had essentially isolated him from the outside world under the guise of medical care. But James had made one crucial mistake. He had underestimated his father's intelligence and determination. Over the past 3 weeks, John had carefully cultivated a relationship with Marcus, the night security guard, an older black man who had been working for the family for 8 years. Marcus had been suspicious of James's sudden concern for his father's safety, and John had gradually shared pieces of his story. "Mr. Rutherford," Marcus said quietly as he entered John's room for the evening check, "you got a visitor wants to see you." James said, "No visitors. James ain't here. And this lady says she got something you need to see." Marcus glanced toward the door, then back at John. "She says her name is Sarah Chun, and she's got proof about what really happened to you and Miss Donna." John's heart hammered against his ribs. "How did she get past?" "Same way I've been getting your letters out to that lawyer you asked me to contact," Marcus said with a slight smile. "Rich folks always forget that the help got eyes and ears too." Sarah Chun entered the room carrying a tablet and a determination that reminded John powerfully of Donna. She was small, fierce, and radiated the kind of moral certainty that made corrupt people nervous. "Mr. Rutherford, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I need you to answer them honestly. But first, I want you to listen to this." She played the recorded conversation between James and Dr. Hayes. As his son's voice filled the room, detailing the systematic destruction of John's life and Donna's career, John felt something reignite in his chest, not just anger but purpose. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly. 3 days. Dr. Rodriguez has been gathering evidence for weeks. She's risking her own career to expose what happened to you." "And Donna? How is she?" Sarah's expression softened. "Broken. She's working as a home health aide, barely making rent. She thinks she destroyed your life. She blames herself for everything." "She saved my life," John said fiercely. "In every way that matters, she saved my life." "I know. And now I'm going to help you save hers." 2 hours later, armed with Sarah's evidence and Marcus's help, John made 3 phone calls that would change everything. The first was to his lawyer, Martin Shaw, whom he had been secretly contacting through Marcus for weeks. The second was to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. The third was to Senator Patricia Williams, an old friend who chaired the Senate subcommittee on healthcare fraud. By morning, the walls James had built around his conspiracy began crumbling. Dr. Hayes was arrested at his office, along with 2 hospital administrators who had taken bribes. Dr. Whitmore was suspended pending investigation. The court order prohibiting contact between John and Donna was suspended while the original competency ruling underwent emergency review. But the most important call came at 6:23 a.m., when John's phone, restored by court order, rang with a number he had memorized but hadn't been allowed to dial. Donna. Her name felt like a prayer on his lips. John. Her voice was disbelieving, hopeful, terrified. "They said I wasn't allowed to. The restraining order has been lifted. The competency ruling is being reviewed. James is under investigation for fraud and conspiracy." The words tumbled out in a rush. "Donna, I need you to know, none of this was your fault. You didn't destroy anything. You saved everything that actually mattered." She was crying now, he could hear it in her voice. "I thought I'd lost you forever. I thought." "You'll never lose me," John said with fierce certainty. I don't care if it takes months or years to untangle this mess. I don't care if we have to fight the entire world. You're my life now, Donna Freeman, and I'm going to spend whatever time I have left proving that love is stronger than money, stronger than prejudice, stronger than fear. Where are you? Home. But not for long. John looked toward his bedroom door, where Marcus stood guard with a knowing smile of a man who had spent his life watching the powerful underestimate the powerless. I'm coming to find you. Today. Across the city, in her small apartment that had become her refuge from the world's judgment, Donna pressed the phone to her ear and felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks: hope. The war wasn't over. The legal battles would be complicated and public. The media would scrutinize their every move. Some people would never believe their love was real. But for the first time since that terrible hearing, Donna Freeman believed they might actually win. The emergency competency review hearing took place exactly 30 days after the original ruling, but this time the courtroom was packed with media, FBI agents, and a very different cast of witnesses. John sat at the plaintiff's table in a tailored suit rather than hospital scrubs, his posture straight and commanding, his eyes clear with purpose. Donna sat beside him, not as a defendant this time, but as the woman he had chosen to build a life with. James entered the courtroom in handcuffs. The evidence Sarah Chun had uncovered had triggered a federal investigation that revealed corruption reaching far beyond one family's dysfunction. The FBI had found a network of medical professionals willing to manipulate diagnoses for the right price, hospital administrators who traded patient welfare for corporate donations, and a pattern of targeting vulnerable individuals whose assets were worth more than their autonomy. But today wasn't about the broader conspiracy. Today was about John Rutherford reclaiming his right to love whom he chose. Dr. Elena Rodriguez took the stand first, her testimony precise and devastating as she dismantled every lie that had been told about Donna's character and competence. Ms. Freeman is one of the most ethical medical professionals I have ever supervised, Elena testified. Her dedication to her patients' well-being is absolute. The idea that she would manipulate a vulnerable person for personal gain is not just false, it's antithetical to everything I've observed about her character over 5 years of working together. The defense attorney, a public defender since James's assets had been frozen, tried to suggest that Dr. Rodriguez was biased, that she was protecting a colleague. But Elena was ready for that. I'm protecting the truth, she said firmly. And the truth is that what happened between Mr. Rutherford and Ms. Freeman wasn't exploitation, it was healing. She helped him remember how to be human again. When Marcus took the stand, his testimony about the secret meetings between James and hospital officials, the pressure he had witnessed, and the gradual isolation imposed on John painted a picture of systematic abuse disguised as family concern. Mr. James, he kept saying he was protecting his daddy, Marcus testified, his deep voice carrying the weight of years of observation. But I've been working for this family 8 years, and I never seen Mr. John more alive than when Miss Donna was helping him get better. That man was healing body and soul, and his own son destroyed it out of greed. But it was Dr. Michael Stewart, the independent psychiatrist appointed by the court, who delivered the testimony that changed everything. I have conducted extensive evaluations of Mr. Rutherford over the past 3 weeks, Dr. Stewart testified. His cognitive function is not only intact but exceptional. His emotional responses are appropriate and well-regulated. His decision-making capacity is fully competent by every standard measure we have. He paused, looking directly at the judge. Your Honor, I have rarely seen a case where the original psychiatric evaluation was so completely at odds with the patient's actual mental state. Either Dr. Hayes is grossly incompetent, or he was deliberately falsifying his findings. The prosecutor handling James's criminal case had already established it was the latter. John was called to testify on his own behalf, and as he wheeled himself to the witness stand, Donna felt her heart swell with pride. This was the man she had fallen in love with, not the broken patient or the cruel millionaire, but the complete human being who had emerged from their time together. Your Honor, John began, his voice strong and clear, I want to address the central question of this hearing, whether my feelings for Donna Freeman represent impaired judgment or the clearest thinking of my life. He looked directly at the judge, unflinching in his honesty. Before my accident, I was a successful but empty man. I had built an empire but had never experienced genuine love. I had accumulated wealth but had never felt truly valued by another human being. The car accident didn't just paralyze my legs, it forced me to confront the paralysis of my heart. John's eyes found Donna's in the courtroom audience. Donna Freeman didn't take advantage of my vulnerability. She helped me discover that vulnerability could be a strength. She didn't manipulate my loneliness. She showed me the difference between being alone and being lonely. She taught me that real power isn't the ability to control others. It's the courage to let someone else matter more than your own ego. His voice grew stronger as he continued. My son has accused me of impaired judgment, but I have never thought more clearly in my life. Choosing love over isolation, choosing growth over stagnation, choosing hope over cynicism, these aren't symptoms of mental incompetence. They're signs of mental health. John paused, gathering himself for the most important words he had ever spoken in public. I love Donna Freeman not because she's my nurse, but because she's the kindest, strongest, most principled person I have ever known. I love her not because I'm confused or manipulated, but because loving her has made me the man I was always supposed to be. And if this court believes that love like that represents impaired judgment, then I pray that everyone in this room experiences such beautiful impairment. The courtroom was silent except for the soft sound of Donna crying, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming recognition of being completely known and completely cherished by another human being. When Donna took the stand, her testimony was quieter but no less powerful. Your Honor, I need you to understand something about the man sitting over there, she said, looking at John. When I first met him, he was cruel and bitter and filled with hatred. I stayed not because I was naive about his faults, but because I could see past them to something worth saving. She wiped tears from her cheeks but continued steadily. John Rutherford didn't become a better person because I manipulated him. He became a better person because someone finally believed he could be better. And in the process of helping him heal, he helped me understand what it means to be truly valued, truly loved, truly seen as worthy of someone's best efforts. She looked directly at the judge. We saved each other, Your Honor. Not because we're weak or confused or impaired, but because that's what love does. It makes broken people whole again. The judge's ruling was swift and unequivocal. John's competency was fully restored, the conservatorship dissolved, and all restrictions on his personal relationships lifted. Moreover, the court issued a formal censure of the hospital's handling of the case and ordered a comprehensive review of their professional boundary policies. But the most satisfying moment came when the judge addressed James directly. Mr. Rutherford, you will be facing federal charges for fraud, conspiracy, and abuse of the legal system. But beyond the legal consequences, you need to understand what you have done. You have weaponized the medical system against your own father, destroyed a nurse's career based on lies, and corrupted multiple institutions in service of your greed. The irony is that in trying to prove your father was mentally incompetent, you have demonstrated a moral incompetence that is far more damaging. As the courtroom emptied, John and Donna found themselves alone for the first time in over a month. They didn't speak at first. Words seemed inadequate after everything they had endured and overcome. Finally, John reached for her hands, the same gentle gesture that had marked so many moments of their journey together. We did it, he said softly. We did, Donna agreed, but her voice carried a note of uncertainty. John, what happens now? The media attention, the scrutiny, the people who will never accept us. Now, John said, pulling her closer, we live. We love each other openly and proudly. We build something beautiful together. And we prove that sometimes the most unlikely love stories are the truest ones of all. As they left the courthouse together, facing a wall of cameras and reporters, neither of them felt afraid. They had survived the worst that hatred and greed could throw at them. Everything else was just details. The war was over. Love had won. 1 year later. The Donna Freeman Recovery Center opened on a bright spring morning, its ribbon-cutting ceremony attended by hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by the extraordinary love story that had captivated the nation. The facility, funded by the John and Donna Rutherford Foundation, specialized in rehabilitation services for patients who had suffered traumatic injuries, with a particular focus on treating the whole person, body, mind, and spirit. Donna stood before the gleaming new building, wearing a simple blue dress and the wedding ring that had sparked another media frenzy 6 months earlier. She was no longer just a nurse. She was the director of patient services, holder of a master's degree in rehabilitation psychology, completed with John's enthusiastic support, and the co-founder of a revolutionary approach to healing that emphasized the therapeutic power of genuine human connection. "Are you ready for this?" John asked, his hand finding hers with the automatic intimacy of two people who had learned that love could triumph over any obstacle. "I've been ready my whole life," Donna replied, but her voice carried a tremor of emotion. "I just didn't know it until you taught me what was possible." The past year had been a whirlwind of vindication, growth, and purposeful action. The FBI investigation had led to the prosecution of 17 individuals involved in the conspiracy, with James receiving a 5-year federal sentence. Dr. Hayes and 3 hospital administrators were also convicted, while Dr. Whitmore had resigned in disgrace. But more importantly, the scandal had sparked a national conversation about institutional racism in healthcare, the abuse of conservatorship laws, and the need for better protections for both patients and medical professionals. John and Donna had testified before Congress, written a book about their experience, and established the foundation to ensure that their story would create positive change for others. Dr. Elena Rodriguez approached them as they prepared for the ribbon cutting, her face glowing with pride and satisfaction. "You know," she said to Donna, 5 years ago when you started working here, I told you that you had a gift for healing people. I had no idea how literally true that would turn out to be." "I had good teachers," Donna replied, embracing the woman who had risked her career to expose the truth, "and good friends who were willing to fight for what was right." Elena looked at the building that bore Donna's name, the same woman who had once doubted whether she could make a difference in the world, and felt tears prick her eyes. "Your grandmother would be so proud." "I think about her every day," Donna said softly. "She always said that love could heal anything if you were brave enough to offer it. I just never imagined how much courage it would take." As they prepared to cut the ribbon, Marcus approached in his security uniform, but now he worked directly for the foundation, overseeing safety for all their facilities. "Mr. and Mrs. Rutherford," he said with a slight smile that had become his trademark, "you ready to change some more lives?" "We're ready," John replied, but he was looking at his wife with the same expression of wonder that had characterized their relationship from its earliest days. The ceremony was simple but powerful. Patients from Pine Valley Medical Center had come to celebrate, along with nurses, doctors, and administrators who had supported Donna during her darkest hours. Sarah Chun was there representing the media, but this time her story would be about hope rather than corruption. As Donna cut the ribbon and the crowd cheered, she thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The cruel words that had nearly broken her spirit. The nights when she had questioned whether love was worth the pain it could cause. The moment when she had almost given up on the possibility of happiness. But standing here now, surrounded by people whose lives had been touched by the proof that love could overcome hatred, prejudice, and systematic oppression, Donna knew that every moment of suffering had been worthwhile. "I have something to tell you," John whispered in her ear as they waved to the crowd. "What's that?" "Dr. Martinez called this morning with the test results." Donna's breath caught. They had been trying to start a family for 3 months, hoping to add to the healing they had brought into the world. And John's smile was radiant. "It looks like the Freeman Rutherford legacy is going to have a very personal continuation." Donna's hand flew to her still flat stomach, her eyes filling with tears of joy. A new life, created from their love, nurtured by their shared commitment to making the world more compassionate. "Are you happy?" she asked, though she could see the answer in his face. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it," John replied. "Grateful." amazed, humbled by how much goodness can come from something that started with so much pain. As the crowd began to tour the new facility, John and Donna stood together watching people explore the space that would become a sanctuary for healing. They had created something that would outlast their own lives, a testament to the transformative power of seeing worth in another person and fighting for that recognition against all odds. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had walked away that first night? John asked. If you had decided I wasn't worth the trouble? Donna considered the question seriously. Sometimes. But then I remember what my grandmother taught me, that love is always a choice, and choosing love is always the right answer, even when it's the hardest one. She squeezed his hand tighter. Besides, she added with a smile that held all the mischief and strength that had first captivated him, where's the adventure in walking away from a challenge? As the sun set over the city that had witnessed their transformation from strangers to soulmates, from patient and nurse to partners in healing, John and Donna Rutherford stood together facing a future full of possibility. Their love story had begun with prejudice and paralysis, had survived betrayal and conspiracy, and had ultimately become proof that the most powerful force in the universe isn't money or status or social approval. It's the decision to see another person as worthy of your very best self, and the courage to fight for that vision until it becomes reality. As we close this incredible journey, I want to ask you, what's the most powerful example of love overcoming impossible odds that you've witnessed in your own life? Have you ever had to choose between what was easy and what was right in matters of the heart? Donna and John's story shows us that sometimes the most unlikely people can save each other. What do you think makes that kind of transformational love possible? Share your thoughts below, and thank you for taking this emotional journey with me. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. If this touched your heart, then you're going to love the next one. It's just as powerful, and even more intriguing than you can imagine. So don't stop here. Click the video showing on your screen right now and continue the journey. I'll be waiting for you on the other side of that story. See you there.